welcome everyone. And today I have with me Clare, who is one of the co-founders of Knittingnannas. Now, I don't know whether many of you, they're all over the place. I've walked past them sitting outside Parliament House in Martin Place, and there are a whole lot of women sitting there knitting. But I thought I'd ask Clare, how did the idea come about?
It was, we started a mining company came into our area, and so a friend of mine, Lindy, who was staying with me 3 nights a week, she lived in the country and she'd come into town to work, decided to go to one of the meetings, and we went to a meeting and we joined one of the groups, but we found that the way the group was run really didn't have much scope for older women, you know, in such a way that we felt stereotyped into being the ones who were suggested we make tea and write letters, and you know.
I'm just going to cut it there because you're not as comfortable yet with this, I think. So why don't we just talk a little minute and then you'll feel more comfortable.
Yeah, okay.
Rather than feeling you're performing. So first of all, what's your background?
I was born in Western Australia. I've worked different places, hospitality, done office work, I've done cleaning. I have an adult son. And
are you a nana? Are you a nana?
No, I'm not a nana. my son's still in training.
and what about, have you always been interested in environmental activism, or?
I've always been interested in the environment. I came to activism quite late. There was some activism before my son was born, but I was living in Sydney and the Blue Mountains at the time, and there wasn't really much scope. And after moving to Lismore and then outside of Lismore, it's become more real.
I'm going to tell you a horror story which will make us connected. When my son was a baby, I was a single mum. His father got lost, and I had a tiny baby to feed, and I was really struggling at that stage for funds and, you know, formula and all of those things. And a job came through the fax machine in those days, and it came from the US. So I always regarded it as a blessing because I didn't know these people. Anyway, it was for a company called Conoco. And Conoco were exploring for coal seam methane gas in the Bowen Basin. Or they did, a whole lot of Americans in cowboy boots came to Brisbane, and they had decided to set up shop and they were going to explore. Now, I didn't understand what that all meant at all, except they were as arrogant as hell, and they weren't even discreet. They stabbed you in the chest instead of the back. You know, they were diabolical, and they ran around Brisbane. You know, they knew the answers to everything. Don't worry about it. Anyway, I got flown out in the corporate jet, which is pretty cool. I've never been in a corporate jet. And I got flown over into Ngara, which is the BHP town. And I saw how the environment had been raped. I have never seen anything like it. And, you know, like, here I needed the money, and then I saw it was, anyway, and it was my job to go to convene the town meetings, because obviously they hired a local to try and set up these town, because you probably know more than me, but under that you don't own the rights below the land, so they could just go into people's environments, in their properties, and set up and do what they wanted to. Now, farmers being farmers, they're used to dangerous, farms are dangerous places. But when I saw these live gas things just sitting in, A, it was unsafe. B, I saw what they'd done to the environment. I was mortified. Anyway, I went back to Brisbane and this guy sat me down, he managing director, you know, and he shot his suit and all of that. And he took me for a performance review and he started to say that I was a terrible communicator, which is, you know, he was just picking on me and all of that. And I just looked at him and said, well, I'd rather be a terrible communicator than raping the land. I might need your money, but I'm not going to do that. So I quit. And I had, you know, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just could not see. And that's years ago, you know.
Yeah.
It was just, so everybody needs to see something like that. They need to see, and I took my son, who's now 24, but when he was 16, we went up to, went to Byron Bay, we went up to Nimbin and we, you know, the drive. And I couldn't believe, because I haven't been there in a while, I couldn't believe the farmland that once again, they're trying to come in this pristine environment and destroy. And people don't get it. Cityside, Sydney, or, you know, any major city, they don't understand it. We're now starting to talk about the environment much more than we ever have done. But every action has an outcome. And if you're going to do bad things like that to the environment, you know, you deserve it. Having said that, and I hope I'm not boring you because I thought you might.
No, I've just got my dog. My friend's let my dog in the room and he's not happy. So if you give me a second, I'll let him out again.
All right. Okay.
Catch Pop. I don't think he's ready for Zoom conferences. Alrighty.
So having said that, my grandfather was like 4th or 5th generation Australian. You know, his family came in the 1850s. And he grew up in an area near Mudgee, which you probably know was in New South Wales. And he was the first man to start open cut mining in Australia at a time when we needed shale and we needed coal for the war effort and all sorts of things. But, you know, here's somebody that came from the land, that understood the environment. He planted trees and he was committed then to remediation and to making sure the land was looked after. Now that's the comparison when it's around greed and, you know, it's just unbelievable. And we don't need coal anymore. There's, you know, we can find clean fuels. So,
yep.
So does that help? Yep.
Yeah, that helps.
All right, so let's do it again. So counting down 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome everyone. And today I have with me a knitting nana, Clare Twomey, who is, where are you coming from, Clare? Lismore, is that where?
I live in Nimbin.
In Nimbin, is joining us all the way from Nimbin. You can see the guitar sitting on the lounge. She's in hippie land. Welcome, Clare. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be a knitting nana?
I was born in Perth, but I came over to New South Wales when I finished school. I've worked in various places. I haven't really stuck at anything. I have an adult son, and once he left home, I had the opportunity to join in with the activists to initially start fighting the coal seam gas.
So coal seam gas around Nimbin, to put it into context for anyone that hasn't been to Nimbin, Nimbin's like a country valley outside of, in the hinterland, I suppose, of Byron Bay, isn't it?
Yeah. So
and it's farmland, yeah?
It's farmland and it's forest.
Yeah, okay. So is the coal seam, are they operating or are they trying to get licenses? What's the story there?
We have a long story about the activism that got the company Metgasco out of the northern rivers of New South Wales, and also got the New South Wales government to buy back the petroleum exploration licence here. So we're quite safe at the moment locally, yeah.
So was that the start of Knitting Nannas? Is that how you decided to protest and make a stance that this wasn't okay?
Yes. When Metgasco first came to the community's attention, and also once we realised exactly what this mining the nature of the mining and the terrible rate of the environment, that a very large amount of people, given our population, came together to work on getting rid of this petroleum exploration from our area.
It's quite incredible that they even thought they could come into the area, because they must have known that, you know, it's a region of hippies and committed environmentalists. It was almost a stupid decision.
The exploration licence covers quite a lot of land, so it wasn't just the Lismore Byron Bay, you know, maybe hippie, certainly a lot of environmentalists here. So initially they were quite far away from population centres. They were south of Grafton, but far enough south to be quite comfortable that they wouldn't have an issue with the population.
Yeah, okay. So you decided to become, you know, you felt strongly about this and you wanted to protest, and you thought, okay, I can use my time to try and end this. Is that how Knitting Nannas started?
Yes, Knitting Nannas started really because we found that there was no real scope for postmenopausal women within the activist group that was there, and we were getting a bit tired of being stereotyped as older women. So my friend Lindy, who had just become a nana, and I were driving around the well sites and came up with this idea that we'd find one of the sites Metgasco was working at, and we'd sit and have a cup of tea and started knitting.
Do you knit?
Oh, very badly.
And it must have been a hoot when you came up with the idea. Were you laughing when you had the...
The whole journey has been hilarious. We have so much fun together. We try to use public humour, and the wonderful thing when you've got a group of women working together doing handicraft, whether or I process chilies for a chili sauce place, and you'd sit around the table cutting chilies, crying, and everyone would be laughing. It's just, you know, that group of women with busy hands, and we'd come up with these ideas.
So does your knitting go anywhere? Do you knit anything for charity, or do you just knit?
All sorts of things, really. We did some things for charity, but we did find that a lot of people who were pro-gas would walk past and say, I hope you're doing that for charity, which upset us greatly. Yes. We've done some knitting as fundraising. My biggest project was I knitted a scarf that's about 30 metres long. She's probably longer than that now. Just as a protest is the wrong word, but, you know, sat down and said, I'm going to knit this scarf until we get them out of the area. So wherever we went, I took the scarf with me, and we'd wrap it around all sorts of things as a visual joke. And when I was arrested myself, I had the scarf wrapped all around the gate and the tripod, and yeah, it makes a big statement that is very tongue-in-cheek.
So I guess you were doing that even before yarn bombing became a thing. Would that be right? Was it?
I think yarn bombing's been around for
has it?
donkey's years. Yeah. it did have a resurgence.
Right.
I think that's a lot of that is with social media.
So what I was really interested in is how it's spread. Like, you know, there's knitting nanas all over the place. Is that correct? It's like a loose structure where a group comes together and off they go.
Yeah, we call ourselves a disorganisation. Really, we welcome anyone who comes from the same place as we are. So when we first started in the Northern Rivers, then we split up into a group from Grafton and a group from Lismore, and then there was Ballina and Byron Bay, and it spread. A lot of it spread through social media. Oh, sorry about that. That's Judy's phone. Sorry.
I'll just pause that.
Okay.
And we're live again. So, Claire, how many knitting nanas are there around Australia? You said it's a disorganisation. Do you know?
We don't really know. We've had a few conferences in New South Wales, and we've had over 100 nanas come to the conferences. We've got some in Canada and the UK and the United States, and because we're a disorganisation, there's no form or joining fee or anything like that. We've written a manifesto which talks about our aims and I guess kind of just the basic foundations for what we are. And if someone or a group decide that they'll follow that manifesto, that's enough for them to become knitting nanas. Usually they'll send us an email and we'll include them because we do work together a lot.
And do you have an overarching goal, you know, as knitting nanas, or is it just where the need is?
Well, one of our mottos is to save the land, air and water for the kiddies. So yeah. It is environmental and it really depends on the location. So some are in the middle of gas fields, some are having problems with coal mines, others with old growth forest logging. So we're very flexible. The main thing that brings us together is being bloody-minded older women who will not take no for an answer and who take advantage of all these years of wonderful wisdom that a great amount of society will push aside. That thing of the invisible older woman.
You need to make Jane Fonda a knitting nana.
Yeah, well, what's her name? The one that, see, I've got nana memory problem. Vivian in London, the designer, Vivian Westwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was part of the Lancashire Nannas, and she rented a tank and she drove her tank with the knitting nanas into London.
And she's a fashion designer, so
she's and she's a lady or a dame or something now. So
okay. So anyone that wants to join a knitting nana group, they can go onto the website, that's correct, and find if there's a group near them, or they can start their own.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. And do they report in at all, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. You know, we've had a couple of groups set up without actually telling us, and you know, every now and then I just Google it, and if I find something new, I'll try and get in contact with them and meet them.
And how much time does it take you? Do you spend a lot of time on it?
I've pulled back from it personally now, but it was a 7-day a week
Really?
job. Yeah. I think when you're involved in volunteer work, people see you as accessible at any time, and yeah, on call 24/7.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess, so tell me, in all of this, I mean, you're obviously deeply committed to the environment. What does spirituality mean for you?
Spirituality is the environment. I'm very happily working with, or the Nannas are happily working with Indigenous women and their relationship with country and with the spirituality in all of nature is something that deeply touches me.
Yeah, okay. And self-care, I mean, if you're working 7 days a week, you obviously said self-care. Claire, I need to sign off from this. I need to spend a bit more me time. How do you look after yourself?
Well, it was difficult at first, and I did burn out. I live in a very beautiful part of the world. We have quite high rainfall. Everything's green. I have a little 2-acre property. I have a lovely whippet, and I have a beautiful son in Sydney that I talk to when I can. So, and of course the Nannas is a wonderful support network. There are we come from all walks of life, but the women are genuine and passionate and will stand up to anyone and anything. So the Nannas themselves are a great source of resilience.
Thanks, Claire, for joining us.
Thank you, Kathy.